Aloha attendees. My name is Roger Jelinek. I'm Executive Director of the Hawaii Book and Music Festival. And it's a pleasure to have you come and see this very special program, a remarkable invention and piece of technology that's going on Kauai, I believe, the only place in the world that's actually doing it. I just want to let you know that if your Ohana and network were not able to attend and would like to, that the session is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, and it will be up on the Better Tomorrow Speaker Series YouTube channel in the next week or so. And then maybe a couple of weeks, it will be available in the form of a highlight mode, much shorter, on the Book and Music Festival website, where it will be there for almost a year, if not longer. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Brittany Lyte of Honolulu Civil Beat, who will be your moderator. Aloha.
Thank you, Roger. And hi, everyone out there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a conversation on the theme of innovation. For a conversation about the West Kauai Energy Project. If you don't know what that is, you will soon find out. My name is Brittany Lyte. I'm a reporter at Honolulu Civil Beat. I also live on Kauai, where KIUC, the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, is developing a unique solar and hydropower plant called the West Kauai Energy Project. Our panelist this evening is David Bissell, who has served as the president and CEO of KIUC since 2010. So no one better to introduce us to this project. In 2017, KIUC drew international attention when the world's largest utility-scale solar plus battery facility developed by Tesla was unveiled. Now KIUC and AES Corp, a developer of a wide variety of generating plants, are together developing an integrated pumped storage, hydropower, solar, and battery project, the first of its kind in the world. Upon completion, KIUC will exceed 80% in renewable sourced energy. The project itself would provide up to a quarter of Kauai's power supply and gradually lower its 34,000 customers' electric bills. David earned his bachelor's degree in accounting and finance from the State University of New York at Brockport and his MBA from the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Brittany, and aloha, everyone.
So David, you've been in this job for about 11 years now. Tell us, what have been your overarching goals in your position as the head at KIUC? And what is it like being in your position at a time when there's such a dramatic push to transition to renewable energy?
Thank you. It's been very exciting in my position for the 11 years as CEO. And before that, I was a CFO, so I came over in a financial role and was promoted to CEO. But my goals really are the goals of my board of directors. KIUC is a cooperative. We're the only cooperative electric utility in the Hawaiian island chains. Every other island is served by HECO companies, which are investor-owned companies. So what makes us different as a cooperative is we have an elected board of directors, and so now we're nonprofit. So any of the earnings above what we need to operate and meet our debt go into the accounts of what we call members. We don't call them customers, they're members of the cooperative. And that's kind of a long introduction to our goal setting process here, but it goes back to the members, the people that pay the bills and are the residents of Kauai elect directors, and the directors come in and their job is to represent the interests of the people. So really ever since we were formed as a cooperative in 2002, when a group of local business people and community members made a really outrageous attempt to come and buy the utility when it was for sale from Citizens Utility. And after a couple of attempts, they were successful, got it done. But back in 2002 and even before that, one of the big parts of wanting to be a cooperative was controlling the island's energy destiny. And the people did not want to be oil-fired, fossil fuel based. They wanted the bills to be more stable. They realized that renewable energies could and should be part of our energy mix here on the island. We have vast natural resources. And really, since we were put together, that was part of our goal, was to become more resilient and internally focused, using our own resources instead of outside resources for our energy needs. So back as early as, I think it was 2006, our board of directors and one of their strategic plans came up with a 50% renewable target. I guess actually it was 2008. They set a 50% renewable target. Really out there forward thinking, because we had about 5% renewable at that time, some legacy hydro projects. Really no other renewables were in the money, but they knew they had to get there. So they set a really forward looking goal. And it was 50% by 2023 was the goal. So lo and behold, here we sit in 2021. Last year we hit 67% renewable on the island. So the goal setting by the people and by our directors really pushed us forward, and we were able to achieve.
And I would love if you could share a little bit more about the energy sources that power Kauai, and how that has changed over time, and maybe beyond just being renewable, what are the different sources? And you know, since, was it 2002 that the co-op was formed? Since then, how has that changed?
Yeah, in 2002, when we were formed, the island was just transitioning out of the sugarcane era. The mills were either shut down or almost all gone. I think we had a little bit of gas, the byproduct of sugarcane, biomass, basically on our grid at that time. That shortly went away as the last mills shut down. So we really started out with some legacy hydro plants from those mills, a few small ones that the old plantations had used for their energy needs. And when we started, it was about 6 or 8% of the energy was coming from the legacy hydro. The rest was coming from oil-fired sources between our two main power plants, Port Allen and Kauai, outside of Lahui here. So 92% oil-fired, a little bit of legacy hydro.
And fast forwarding to the future, is the goal to be completely renewable energy based, or will there always be a place for some of these other sources?
Well, the state's goal by 2045 is to be 100% renewable. We think we can get there. We feel we have to get there. When we say we're at 67% last year, that doesn't mean we've got a smooth track to get into 100%. However, a lot of growth could come from electric vehicles, for example. You always have to be developing new sources. You got to be looking forward. If the population grows, if load grows, you have to keep up with it. And a lot of technical challenges to operating a grid on full renewable, which is one of the biggest achievements we've had here, at least during the daylight hours. When the sun is shining, we've routinely operated our grid on 100% renewable for hours at a time. For really thousands of hours last year, we were able to do that. So pretty much last year, every day the sun was shining brightly, we were at 100% renewable during those days, during those hours, which really no other grid in the country is doing, particularly with the high amount of solar powered energy we're using here. Because of course, solar, as the clouds come over, you can gain or lose solar depending on where the clouds are at. So it's a real challenge for a grid. But our engineers and technicians have done really well. Our reliability was the best ever last year, even with all the solar, and really proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
So let's get into talking about the West Kauai Energy Project and how it fits into KIUC's renewable energy goals. I'm curious if this project is perhaps in some way an answer to a problem, or a challenge as you work to increase the amount of renewable energy sources. And first, I think, just in very simple terms, we'll get into the details, but in simple terms, what is this project and why is it different?
This project it's really an old technology being applied in a new way. Pump storage hydro is out throughout the world. There's quite a few large pump storage hydro projects on the mainland even. And ultimately what it means is you're taking some source of energy, in our case, it's solar, a big solar field. They run pumps and they push water uphill. So when the energy is available, you push water uphill. In our case, we push it from one old irrigation reservoir, basically an irrigation pond. We have the PV, the solar energy will produce, run these big pumps during the daytime. When the sun's shining, push the water uphill to another reservoir, and it'll sit there and collect as the sun's producing. Now in the evening, or if it's a bad day when there's no sun or limited sun, we'll let that water come out of the upper reservoir, flow downhill through a pipe, spin a turbine, and make electricity. So it'll be stored. It's got nice value of water is a fairly efficient storage mechanism. A big reservoir can hold a lot of energy, and it's very good because when the sun's not shining, we just let it run downhill. I don't know if that was a simple explanation to start off on it, but that's the basic premise, is about as simple as it gets, pushing water uphill and letting it flow back down in the nighttime hours.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, this project would help overcome that challenge of just the simple fact that you can't, the sun isn't going to produce energy when it's dark outside.
Well, there's at least two challenges we're facing related to the sun. One is we've been a victim of our own success. We have so much solar and so much other renewables that when the sun's shining, and when I said we were at 100% renewable, that's great, but it means you can't take any more solar-based sun during the day because we don't have any load. We're, unlike a lot of areas, we're our own grid. There's no place outside of Kauai that the energy can come from or go to. So we have to perfectly balance the supply and the demand here. And that means if we're full up with renewables, we have to either curtail them, shut them down because we don't have enough load, or you have to be able to store the energy somewhere. And we've been successful, the project with Tesla, another two projects we've done with AES, who's also working with us on the pump storage project, have combined large PV fields with battery storage. And they've worked really well, but that's basically are holding 4 or 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours worth of energy. And still quite a bit of the solar time period is going straight to our grid. Once the grid's full, as it is now, we have to take that energy and it's got to all be stored. So, excuse me, sorry about that. So instead of having 5 hours or so, we need to have 8 or 12 hours of storage, and using battery technology, that gets to be very expensive. So problem it solved is we wanted to still bring in our cheapest energy source, which is photovoltaic, but we need to be able to store it in a cost-effective way. And the water in reservoirs is a very cost-effective way to have what we call bulk storage, longer duration storage. So every day we'll be able to store 12 hours of output, basically the entire daylight sun-time solar production, and store that in water and have it sitting in the reservoir if we need to.
So explain exactly what about this technology is so groundbreaking. It sounds like some of these technologies are not new, but layering them and piecing them together in this way is new. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a couple parts of this that's very innovative. One is it's the first that we're aware of that's tying pump storage hydro to photovoltaic, a large solar field. And that's because the challenge there is that solar, of course, the sun comes and goes, you have energy, you don't have energy, and it's difficult to keep these pumps operating under that environment. Usually these large pump storage projects on the mainland and international, there's a reliable fossil fuel, be it coal or some other fossil type fuel that's running steadily. And it's kind of they store it when there's a price imbalance between the market of coal versus other sources of energy. So when they've got a cheaper, stable source, they'll pump the water, store it, and bring it back down when the energy prices are more expensive, and that works for them. Ours is working with a variable technology, the sun, and that's just not good on pumps to have energy levels go high, go low. It's hard for the pumps to operate. So that's where the really third component of this project comes in, batteries. This will have 2 hours of battery storage, which will enable the sun to go into a battery, and then we can use the batteries to regulate the pumping. So if there's more or less solar, the batteries can take more or less and keep the pumps at an even level, and then they'll efficiently pump the water uphill. So it gets a little complex, but it's really using it for solar is the unique aspect, and has been a real technical challenge for our engineers and the AES engineers to figure out how to do this reliably and cost effectively.
So is it Kauai's very dependable sunlight that is creating the conditions where, you know, this small island is poised to have this really new innovative technology? I mean, why isn't this already happening or in the works other places? What's creating the conditions where Kauai is able to be, you know, number one here to do this?
Sunlight's part of it, but it's an interesting fact that really Hawaii in general and Kauai in particular, our sunlight and solar regime is not that great compared to some. We're not like we're out in a desert and have a steady sun's always shining type of thing. Our sun comes and goes, so it's more challenging technology to keep it and operate a grid reliably. But we do have good sun, good enough sun. We also, the unique characteristics on Kauai is we have a lot of land, a lot of fallow farmland that allows these fairly big solar fields to go into productive use because it's land that's not being used for other purposes. For example, this project's going to use about 350 acres of land, give or take, but there's thousands of acres in the vicinity out there that's either being used for farming or is sitting on fallow right now. So a lot of land is a good thing. The land is relatively inexpensive on the island, which is the second thing. And then the geography down there on the west side of Kauai, where you can go from flat, basically sea level, up to several thousand feet over a relatively short amount of area. So it's efficient with the high, they call it high head in the industry, the altitude gains over a short area, and then having the legacy plantation infrastructure, the reservoirs that are already there that just have to be rehabilitated is what makes it the perfect location. You got geography, you got sun, and you got relatively cheap and available land.
Yeah, let's talk about the geography a little bit more. So it sounds like the west side is really uniquely positioned to host this project, and perhaps it wouldn't work as well other places. Talk a little bit more about that, and also just describe for folks who have some familiarity with the west side of Kauai, kind of where this is, and you know, would you encounter it in a car or on a hiking trail, or just exactly where is this?
Well, it starts off on the Mana Plains, kind of across from the Pacific Missile Range facility down in the far, almost at the end of the road on Kauai as you head west. But the field will be back closer to the cliffs, and it may they won't be very visible as you drive by. You may be able to see the field a little bit, but it's going to be quite a ways back towards the cliffs. So the solar farm and the actual powerhouse and pumping stations will be back in that same general area. Shouldn't be much of a visual impact down there. Then it's all going to be pretty much piping and underground piping up to the reservoir and the Pu'uopai Reservoir, which is actually on DHHL land, the Hawaiian homestead land. That reservoir today is sitting pretty much empty. It'll get a little bit, it'll fill up a little bit when it's rained, but it's essentially been decommissioned because of regulations around dams. Makes it pretty expensive for DHHL to keep it up. And then the third reservoir that comes into play as you go farther uphill in the Kauai State Park is the Pu'ulua Reservoir, which is pretty well known out here. It's where a lot of residents and even some visitors go to fish for trout. It's at about quite a ways up, almost to the visitor center in Kauai, and it's a pretty popular recreation area. Nice thing about this project is that facility also is sitting way below capacity because of dam safety regulations. And one of the things we'll do is we'll rehab that reservoir, bring it up to its full capacity. So instead, when you go right now, you go down and it looks to be about a third empty because it is. And we'll fix it, get it up to standards, get it up to all the safety standards so it'll be fully available. It'll help the fishing, help the recreation. We'll improve the roads to get in and out of all the reservoirs. So that'll make it more available for the public. And on the Pu'uopai Reservoir on DHHL land, Department of Hawaiian Homes, it'll actually open it up to Hawaiian beneficiaries to live and have farm plot lots there. There'll be several hundred multi-acre farm lots, agriculture lots for the Native Hawaiian beneficiaries to live and farm. So right now it's basically barren land. It's red dirt. Road access is poor, no electrical service at all, and no reliable irrigation. We'll fix the irrigation system that's there. We'll maintain it, get everything back up to its historic standards. So there'll be reliable water, there'll be electrical access up there, and we'll fix the roads so that whole area can be put into productive use by the Hawaiian community.
So this project proposes to activate some aging, underutilized infrastructure, irrigation, roads, reservoirs. It sounds like this project will have quite a few benefits for the broader community beyond, the project's goals in itself. Can you talk with me a little bit more about how this project has some just natural community benefits based on what improvements you'll need to make anyway?
Yeah, it's really kind of a classic public-private partnership on this, where the state agencies, and I've talked about two, DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, and the third one down on the plains is the Agribusiness Development Corporation. That's where has the farmland down there. Well, they simply don't have the money to invest into bringing these assets back up to their old condition where they're fully functional. And that's why they've been sitting there either empty or partially in use. We, as a utility, and because of what we're offsetting is the high cost of fossil fuel, we can invest in those resources, use them for dual purposes of irrigation for the farmland, both at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands area and down at the plains on the ADC land. We can use the irrigation system for that to serve it agriculture, and we can realize from the investments in all that property to produce energy. So the energy makes the money available to get the benefits to the agriculture and to the community of better access, better recreation, and even such things as a better firefighting capabilities. Having these big reservoirs that helicopters and the firefighters can go to if there's a wildfire in Kauai, which seem to be happening more and more frequently, they'll be able to go down, dip, get water quickly, and hopefully be able to put fires out quicker. So a lot of benefits, but it's really driven by ultimately this transition off oil. Cheaper, we can invest a lot of money and resources and still have lower cost energy for the people of Kauai, so it becomes a win-win.
What has the community response been like so far, if you could sum it up? I mean, anytime there's change or something new, you know, it takes a while for folks to digest. What kind of support or not has this project gotten?
I think in general, it's been very, very well supported by the community. A lot of people are excited about it. A lot of people on the west side are excited about getting these resources back into productive use. And in fact, really since 2011, when I first became CEO, I heard from community members all the time, why aren't you guys doing more hydro? People on Kauai recognize that there's a lot of hydro resources. A lot of people you'd see in a grocery store or at Costco would be always saying, hey, why don't we do this? Do more. So we started looking hard at it. And ultimately, the best project that we found on the whole island was on the west side. And the West Kauai Energy Project really encompasses a tremendous amount of benefits. So I think the support's been good. It's always in today's world, you always have to communicate. You got to work with the community really from start of the idea as a conceptual idea all the way to a completion, and it won't end there. You still have to work with them as it's operating. So it's going to be a continual community focus from us, and we think it's very good for the community. It'll bring benefits for decades, and I think most of the people in the community recognize that.
In some ways, is Kauai sort of a guinea pig, you know, to kind of pilot this technology? Do you think, you know, if it's constructed here and if it's successful, do you think other places will tap into this? Or again, is it kind of our unique geography and some of the unique conditions that make it really suitable for here?
I think you'll see it in other places. And the analogy is really we started on Kauai, really had the first utility scale solar and battery storage project anywhere in the world. Now they're all over the place, being built all over Hawaii and really all over the world. And we were the innovator. We were the first one, the test case with Tesla, and one of the early ones from AES. Tesla was first, AES was the biggest in the world, and that technology is being applied all over now. So I think you'll see more of the integration of PV and pump storage technology where the geographic features allow it. You hear more and more California, out west and other states where their grid is having problems and storage is becoming a big issue there. If they have the areas where they can do it in a larger scale, I think you'll start seeing it more. And I think that ultimately that's why big companies like AES are interested in working with us here on Kauai and Tesla, because it is a good test bed. We don't like to look at ourselves as a guinea pig. We like to look at ourselves as a test bed for innovation. We've got a willing company, a good management team, good engineers and technical people, and we work well with people from great companies, and bringing those talents out of Kauai has produced pretty impressive results.
And of course, there's many feel-good and practical reasons to launch a project like this that makes use of renewable energy more and gets, you know, the co-op closer to its goal. But then, you know, there's also the fact that you're projecting this project will lower members' bills. There's 34,000 customers that you call members because they are. How will this affect, you know, folks' bills? You know, I think people will want to know that. How much savings can they expect? Will it be immediate? Will it be over time?
Hopefully the answer is yes to both of those, that they'll see savings immediately and over time. It's always interesting here because when we talk about savings, we're talking comparing to what we would have paid under oil. And as we all know how volatile oil pricing is, the savings really depend on the cost of oil going forward. Based on our projections, we think it'll save the people hundreds of millions of dollars. I think we're forecasting 150 to 170 million dollars in savings, net present value savings on the project over 20 or 25 years. Now, if oil goes down, as we saw a few years ago, or it goes down to $20, $30 a barrel long term, the savings will be much less or non-existent. If it goes up to over 100, where it seems to be heading, the savings will be better. So it's really what oil is, because that's what we're avoiding by bringing this project in. But we forecast it'll have material savings for membership. A recent PUC filing, I think we estimated on average it'll save a residential customer $20 a month over the life of the project, likely starting out on the lower end and going higher as time goes forward. But we certainly project it'll save money, and it's also save using about 8 million gallons of oil a year on the island. So it's going to save carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions as well. It's becoming increasingly important both for us on Kauai and throughout the state and the world for that matter. So should be good from an economic side. It certainly will be good from an environmental side in terms of our greenhouse gas profile.
And when you talk about the life of the project, what does that mean? Is there kind of an ending date when this isn't efficient anymore or doesn't work as well? Talk to me about that.
It really depends on what new technologies are out there. This technology can last indefinitely. We have hydros that have been in service for over 100 years in multiple locations on the island. So the basic hydro technology is pretty, well, it's very reliable, very stable. It could be there for 100 years or more. Now, there be some better technology that comes around that makes that not competitive and phased out over time? I don't know. I can't predict to that level of accuracy, but it's going to be around for a long time. And the nice part is that we haven't talked about is after the debt is paid off on the project over 25 or 30 years, the pricing should be able to come down, assuming it stays in service. There's really no input prices to it. The sun shines, we don't have to pay for sun. The water used in the project should be relatively inexpensive over a time horizon. And that's when you can really get the reduced cost is for our kids and grandkids that'll be here that should see the debt-free project and have a much more radical pricing reduction.
Has this project received all of the necessary approvals? I'm sure there's many. I know that can be a very long process. Where are we at in that process? And also when did the effort begin too?
Well, the answer is no, we do not have all of the necessary approvals. We have a lot of approvals still to get. We're really on the early stage of that. It'll be a year or so, probably a little more than a year before all the permits would be obtained for the project and it could start construction. It'll be a couple of year construction duration after that. So the end goal is, for various reasons, mainly tax credit expirations, the project needs to be in service by the end of 2025. So that's the ultimate end goal on this. Hopefully it can go in a little bit earlier, but things have to break right on some of the permitting and in the timeline. So there's a lot of permits on this project. It is complex with all the different landowners, state agencies, and the different technologies.
And is that sort of par for the course too, when you are kind of debuting a new technology? Does it tend to have some additional regulatory hurdles?
It's more this technology, the fact that we're going to be doing some fairly significant work on renovating reservoirs. We have to move a lot of dirt, fix things up. So it's much easier to put a solar field down with some limited batteries around it than it is to have a project that spans miles uphill. So it's more complex, more permitting. But the good thing is, you touched on this earlier, Brittany, that it's all existing assets. The reservoirs are there, the ditches are there. For the most part, all the roads are there. So it's not really invasive work because all this area has already been disturbed, so to speak. Most of it's either been in farmland. All the acreage on the plains, the Minot Plains, has been farmed, as the area at the Puuopai in the middle and DHHL lands. That's where most of our reservoir work, that's where the powerhouses would be. It's already it's been in farmland. It's not like we're taking away natural forest land or anything. In the other areas, it's all, it has been disturbed. The ditches are there. The reservoir is already there. The diversions further uphill where the streams divert water to feed the project and irrigation, they're already there. The diversions will be rehabilitated so they're more modern and can adjust better for weather conditions and make the stream levels stay at the areas they need to be versus the old plantation era diversions that were set more to divert water no matter how much water was in the streams. These will all be modernized.
And if the project does receive all of its approvals, do you have even just an estimate of how long the construction phase might take?
It's about 2 years. And that's being conservative on the construction, depending on, it's going to be weather dependent and trying to get through, have 2 dry seasons to make sure they can meet the deadlines.
And so apart from, the regulatory process that you're going through now, what challenges lie ahead that you can see now? I mean, what are the major hurdles or just challenges that you see ahead in order to get this online and keep it running smoothly?
Well, like I said, we have to get through the permitting and the regulatory side. We also, outside of constructing it, which will have its challenges, certainly doable, but I'm personally concerned about inflation coming in and making the project less attractive for AES as the developer of it. They can certainly handle a reasonable amount of inflation, but if we get much higher than expected levels of inflation or interest rates go way up, that could stress the project. So the economy is a concern. I think it's a manageable concern. I don't see interest rates going 12% or anything like in the 70s that would put a project on risk, but it is pretty uncertain times now and really unparalleled times on the environment, on the economy. So that's a concern. Construction will be a challenge. It'll be I think the engineers and the construction people are more than confident they can do it and get it done in the time frame. And really here, and as any project done in Hawaii and more throughout the country, we have to continue to engage with the community and keep the community informed and working with it and continue to build support on the project.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Are there other ways that this pandemic period has shifted the direction of this project or added a little wrinkle or complication? I mean, this is such a strange time to go to school, let alone, build a groundbreaking project. How has the pandemic affected this effort?
Oh, it's had a huge impact, just like everything else. And it all comes down to people. It's so much harder to connect with people. There's a lot of working with all the agencies and the permitting folks is really a people intensive operation. That's all had to shift to Zoom. Working with our partners from AES. Harder that, we're not having frequent face-to-face project meetings. It's all done on Zoom, and technical matters done on a Zoom call is pretty difficult. Working with even within our own people here on Kauai, it's much harder to connect and to communicate with our community when we can't do it in person like we'd all like to. So it's been a real challenge for us as any other organization and any other significant activity. I think it's maybe been a little more on this because so much of this is communication oriented. We have to be able to communicate what we're doing to the agencies, to our stakeholders here on Kauai and the community here on Kauai. And it's a complex project, and we've really had to work hard on trying to keep the communications going in this environment.
I've got a couple more questions here, but I just want to encourage folks who are listening in, if you'd like to ask your own question, please think about submitting it in the next few minutes so we can get to that. And David, really, you set me up. I mean, what else do you want people to understand about this? Are there misunderstandings that you want to clear up? Or just other aspects of this project we haven't gotten into? I mean, please tell us what you want people to know.
What I would like people to know is that this project has tremendous benefits for the community, tremendous benefits for the environment, the infrastructure investments that we'll be making. And when I say we, it's more than KIUC. Ultimately, everybody on our island that uses electricity is going to be investing in this project because it's their electric bills that pay for it. So we feel this is a real win-win-win for us, the environment, and for the community and the state, because our investment, your investment, the people that have energy bills on Kauai will fund it. We can get the resources put into productive use. Even if you're not an electric user or electric bill payer here, if you go to Kauai, if you come over to visit Kauai and you go to Kauai, the facilities will be better. You'll be able to access areas better. It'll help put Hawaiians onto their homeland, get them into productive use on the homestead property, which is really exciting. DHHL is excited about this project. It's key to their development efforts on the west side, and it's a good technology. We've got some great people working here. Our engineers are top notch. Working with great companies. The AES technical people are fabulous to work with. Really doing innovative stuff. We're confident that they can deliver this project, and that's why we partnered up with them. So we're excited. We think it can really progress our islands much closer to the 100% renewable. It can move us from the 65-70% we are now up to 85-90%, bringing in an innovative technology in a cost-effective way, good for the environment, good for the community. So we're really excited about it.
Thanks, David. And we do have an audience question here. It says, although there seems to be major support for the project, what kind of pushback have you received?
It's like any project. There's always some pushback. It's water-based project, so any project in Hawaii, really anywhere that involves water, there's going to be concerns that the water is used properly and for the most beneficial use. This project has a pretty strong story around the water use because when it's all done, we'll be diverting less water than it was before the project started its formative years in the 2011 period. There'll be less water diverted, more efficient use of it. It'll go to both agriculture and energy use, and it'll be maintained well and be able to be regulated well. But that's probably the biggest one, and it's a legitimate concern for the community. Whenever you divert water from a stream, there's trade-offs on that. When you move it from its natural environment of a stream away from it, and you need to be able to make sure it's properly used and has benefits. And this project does have considerable benefits for the community. And it keeps we're diverting a fraction of the water in the Waimea River. So the river will be healthy. The stream will have first priority, and that'll be able to be regulated with a more modern technology at the diversions that can adjust to make sure that the stream always has the first call on the water that's available. It's the minimum in-stream flow standards have to be met, and it'll be able to adjust so they're always met, whether in periods of low rain.
Thanks, David. Folks in the audience, I have one more question myself. So if you have any last minute questions, please feel free to chime in. David, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know, KIUC has piloted some really groundbreaking, innovative projects as we've been discussing. What is this, you know, what do you think is coming next 10 years from now? I mean, you must have some window into what's not quite possible yet, but coming in terms of, you know, renewable energy sources and how to do this in a way that's more economical and better for the environment. Can you share at all just maybe some projections of what things might look like in the near future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. My crystal ball says we're going to start shifting our focus more from renewable energy generation here to technologies, bringing in sophisticated systems to manage load, to manage demand, particularly as electric vehicles come more into play. We have to have a way to make sure that every person on Kauai 20 years from now is not coming in and plugging in their electric vehicle at the exact same time. That would be a tremendous challenge for the system. We'd have to put in much more generation, work much harder to meet our renewable goals. So we have to continue to focus on technology, how to manage demand, how to manage our load, to make sure that this technology is good and that we're eliminating carbon from the oil-based energy that's going into fueling our vehicles today, to using clean renewable energy to go into the vehicles. So that's going to be a challenge, how much load comes on, how much more energy is driven by the transition in the transportation industry, I think is going to be the major push. Technologies, it seems like PV panels, they've gotten radically better over the last 5 or 10 years. I think they'll continue to improve, and pricing will get better, but it's not going to go a whole lot lower than it is today. Storage is the issue, and hopefully battery technology continues to get more robust and cheaper. President Biden's got a big push on trying to lower the cost of storage. So if we can continue to have lower cost PV, even if it's a little bit lower, and battery prices drop, we can use that to supplement what's probably going to be load growth from electric vehicles.
Very interesting. We do have one more question from the audience. This is from Sequoia. It says, Kauai residents, especially those of the west side, are concerned about KIUC's water use. Did the project move from a closed loop system to one which will harvest and distribute an average of 11 million GPD? Can you please explain the 2017 settlement that caused this change? Can you address that, David?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. This project's gone through a lot of gyrations in the 10 or 12 years we've been investigating hydro on the west side. It actually started out as a 100% flow-through hydro. When we were first looking at it, it evolved into a concept of a total closed loop pump storage hydro back around 2014 or so. And then as we went, there was a water mediation process that was instigated by a lawsuit by Earth Justice and some of the community groups against waste in that system. That was around the 2015 period, I think that took place. KIUC was a party to the mediation on that. Mediation took a year and a half or so and had a groundbreaking historical settlement around water where all the parties came together, the agriculture interests on the Mauna Plains, DHHL, the electric utility, and the citizens groups represented by Earth Justice came together, working with the Commission on Water Resource Management, making sure that the streams were taken care of and the environment was taken care of. And it was a really groundbreaking. Water disputes typically can take a decade or more here in Hawaii. Parties came together, everybody balanced the efforts, came up with, might not have made everyone happy. Nobody got everything they wanted. Everybody gains a little bit, everybody loses a little bit in a settlement process, but all the interests were weighed and a determination was made on how much water was needed for agriculture, how much was needed to stay in the streams. We ultimately then formed the project around the amount of water that was allocated for DHHL and for agriculture use. The water was going to be transported. It made the most sense that we as the utility would help transport it and use that to make energy on its way down to DHHL and on its way down to the plains for agriculture purposes. So that was all. It was really a groundbreaking mediation done then. And at that time, during the mediation process, the project evolved into the integrated pump storage hydro and flow through hydro that it is today.
So the current state of this project is very much so shaped by community input then, it sounds.
Yeah, community groups, the mediation participants all had a say in their own way, protecting whatever interest of the stream, concerns about the Waimea river levels. The agriculture people were looking for making sure they had stable water. DHHL wanted water and wanted the ability to put their beneficiaries on the land. And we were there to see if we could do it, if there's going to be enough resources for us to do an energy project. And almost miraculously, all those interests came together and came up with a settlement and enabled this project to go forward. So it really was a remarkable, we could probably spend an hour or so talking about the mediation process and all the parties. There's some good videos out there on the Commission of Water Resource Management that they had the foresight of taking videos of all the participants back when the settlement was done and getting all the inputs and have that saved for posterity. So it's a pretty remarkable process.
Great. Thank you, audience members who participated with some questions. Roger, would you like to rejoin us?
Yeah, I live on the windward side of Oahu, and there's a tremendous squall of rain outside hitting my tin roof. So if you hear a strange sound, that's what it is. Anyway, that was I think it's an absolutely fascinating project, and it seems so essentially simple, and yet I guess without really good batteries, it wouldn't have worked. And without computers to manage it, it wouldn't work. Did you address the management, the technical management?
Well, it's managing first of all, it starts off as a grid that we have to have all the KIUC integrated management that our grid operators use. So they'll ultimately balance the entire energy needs of the island. The project itself will have very sophisticated technologies managing the load between the batteries, the pumping, and the solar fields. Will always have to stay in balance. So it's going to be a lot of technology, a lot of control systems and computer systems in play that are really ultimately designed and transitioned by our operators here on Kauai, and with the AES technology, and technicians will work together to come up with a system that works. And really on a small grid like ours, it has to work. It has to work right, or it can cause real problems. So the technicians and the engineers really have to work closely together. The experts from AES have to work with us to make sure we don't have flaws, because it can have very bad impacts on a grid if it's not done right. So we've done it before. We've been innovative before. We're comfortable we can do it with our team and with the AES team and make a very good project work from a technical side.
And is there redundancy built in? I mean, if the software goes wrong for whatever reason, is there a way to cover that situation?
Oh yeah, the engineers always want to have redundant systems. And the nice part about this is even the technology is somewhat redundant, because PV, if the sun's not shining, we'll have all this storage sitting up in the reservoirs, stored energy in the reservoirs. So in periods when we don't have a lot of sun shining on our island and our grid would be going back to being dependent on fossil fuel more and more, we can take the stored energy out of the reservoirs, let it go downhill and produce energy. So it's even got redundancy to the sun to some extent.
Well, interesting. Well, I don't have any more questions, but Brittany, I think it's good time, good moment to close. I'd like to thank you very much for spending this time with us. I know you're a very busy person, and we really appreciate the elaboration of the project. And I wish you all the best of luck with getting it done.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about the project. If anybody wants to learn some more, they can go to our West Kauai Energy Project on the website. You can look it up, and there's a whole site set dedicated to the project and some of the technologies and approaches to it. So it's out there on the web, and encourage people that are interested to look.
I have one last question. Is it going to become a tourist attraction?
Parts of it may. My board of directors joked that we needed to set up a viewing area to show off the technology, but a lot of our projects have become kind of minor tourist attractions. We get a lot of requests for tours. Really, for us as small as we are, it's kind of became a challenge to accommodate. So maybe this one will be big enough that some enterprising community group can decide they want to lead tours to it.
Maybe it's a source of revenue.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, and really appreciate it. Aloha.
Aloha.